Hey everyone, welcome to WDIM News, my weekly podcast where I talk sci-fi stuff and some other stuff. My name is Eric. Thank you very much for joining me. What did you think of that finale? Of course, I'm talking about the finale of Star Trek Picard titled The Last Generation. I really enjoyed it, and I think that it honestly will have big ramifications in regard to how Star Trek produces new content moving forward. And speaking of new content, we got a big update from Paramount about the next generation of Star Trek, forgive the pun, with a new trailer released online and a movie announcement in the past week. So first, I want to go through the finale of Picard and tell you what I thought. I also would love to hear what you thought of it too, so let me know that in the comments. I got some really thoughtful comments about the finale on my video breakdown of that episode, a video that you should definitely check out if you have not yet. After going through the finale, I want to briefly look at the series Picard itself as a whole and why I think the producers probably did not need the first two seasons and possibly even half of this final season for it to have been successful. Then I will go through the Strange New Worlds Season 2 trailer, which I think tells us a lot about the upcoming season, as well as the announcement that if you follow this channel, you know that I have been waiting for the return of Michelle Yeoh in a Section 31 Star Trek film. So first, let's talk about that finale of Star Trek Picard. Of course, I will be going over spoilers, so if you have not watched that episode, definitely go see that. And like I said before, if you have not checked out my breakdown of that episode, you should. I put a lot of time into it. I think it turned out pretty good if I do say so myself. So if you have not seen that breakdown episode yet, definitely check that out. So anyway, let's talk about that finale. In the past, I've done, what I like and then what I didn't like. But I think for this one, I'm just going to go through the episode itself because I liked most of it. First, we had the intro, and the first thing we hear is Walter Koenig's voice. Having him in this episode I thought was great, and they made him the son of Pavel Chekhov, and they named him Anton Chekhov, which of course is a famous writer, but I think in this case it was done, in memory of Anton Yelchin, who of course played Chekhov in the J.J. Abrams films and died unfortunately in 2016. So I thought that was all really great and a great way to kick off this episode. A lot of the things I'm going to talk about in this episode are big. Like everything about this episode made this seem like an event. It made it seem like a movie. It really felt like a bigger than life, a bigger than series kind of episode. And to start out like this with a voice from the past, also paying homage to those characters, I think really just kicked this episode off great. And then, after we hear his voice, we cut to our characters from the next generation who are now back on the Enterprise D. And we get that Picard monologue about how, what started 35 years ago ends tonight. I love that too. Again, it just sets the stakes for the episode. Some of the problems in this season that have to do with pacing and such have to do with, the stakes kind of get raised and they get raised and they get raised. And then it just gets crazy after a while. Like what's the big deal anymore? When you keep upping the ante, it's hard to keep up. But by, Picard having that speech in the beginning saying, what started 35 years ago ends tonight, it really set the tone. I just thought that this was a great way to kick off this episode with Picard having the speech about the Borg and then having Walter Koenig come back and voice the son of the character that he played on the original series. Just chef's kiss, like the best way that I think they could have started off this episode. Then after the intro, which I also like the intro too, how they kind of Borgified the intro. I love when series do that on the finales. You'll see that a lot. They'll change, some part of the intro and stuff like that. I know one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, they changed the intro to be a mirror universe version. So all the news clippings were all changed and everything like that. I love that stuff. So I thought that was really cool. And then when we come back, we see Seven really taking to her role as a leader, as the captain of the ship. The first time we saw her, she was a drone, literally a drone for the Borg. And now she's the captain of a Federation vessel. I think that shows just great character development for Seven. I said it a couple times before that one of the best things that the series Star Trek Picard has been making Seven a much better character than she was on Voyager. There wasn't really anything wrong with her on Voyager, but she really got some silly plot lines. And I think a lot of her appeal was her look and stuff like that instead of what she was doing on screen. And now it's more, what she's doing on screen, what her character is able to do. And the fact that they made her a captain, it feels very authentic. It didn't feel as authentic at the end of season 2 when Picard just put her in the captain's chair. Now that she really earned it, even though she was first officer when this season began, she obviously was facing a captain that kind of believed in her more than she thought he did, but was really working against her at times. And she really had to prove herself. And I think she did. I think as an actress, Jerry Ryan proved that she could really carry this character as a lead in a series. If they do decide to move forward with a Star Trek Legacy series, she'll be the captain on that ship. And I think throughout, especially this season, but this series as a whole, Jerry Ryan has proven that Seven is a very compelling character. There's a lot of layers to her, and I really like the character development that I've seen from her, not just in this episode, but in the season and in the series. And then we see the Next Generation characters having to kind of say goodbye to each other because they're going to split up, and some of them are going to stay on the ship, and some of them are going to go down on the cube. And we get Dr. Crusher and Picard thinking they're going to have their last conversation, and Picard actually forgave Dr. Crusher. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know if the audience does, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later when I talk about if this should have been a movie or if this should have been a 10-episode series. But some of the stuff in this season, it's just better if you don't think about it, which I guess is okay. I mean, if you're going to go that way, you're going to go that way. You know, I've seen plenty of Michael Bay movies to kind of turn off my brain a little bit and just have fun. And in the case of Dr. Crusher, I still don't buy why she kept Jack away from everyone. It actually would have made more sense if Dr. Crusher had figured out the Borg part of Jack to keep him away from Picard and to keep him away from the Federation. I think that would have made a lot more sense, but they went with just Dr. Crusher being an overbearing mother. It was nice to see at least Jean-Luc forgive Dr. Crusher, even if members of the audience may not. And then I also really liked once they got on the Borg cube, Picard throwing away his duty to go for his son, saying, you know, I can't be a captain anymore. I have to be a father. Just like Seven, this shows a lot of character development for Picard. Not just in this episode, not just in the season, but in this series. He started out very self-centered. I think it was this season that started out with him saying he didn't need a legacy and he didn't care about stuff like that. And for him to now throw away his duty that was the paramount thing in his life to go after his son just shows a lot of character development. And I really liked that. I thought that was a big character moment for Jean-Luc Picard and Sir Patrick Stewart, and probably one of my favorite Picard moments from this series. I really like that. And I think that that's also when he has that moment with Riker, and, you know, they don't really say a lot. They know each other so well. That was really good. And I also liked how his goodbye with Worf was a lot different, because Riker and Worf are, of course, very different characters. So it just made a lot of sense. I mean, we saw later in the episode that Worf is kind of more touchy-feely now, you know, like he'll hug somebody now, and he probably would have hugged Picard if he needed to. But to have Worf, you know, say, you know, Klingons don't have a word for defeat or farewell, I thought it was just really cool. I thought that was a really great scene. And then through Picard, we get to see Jack, and we get the return of the Borg Queen, sort of. I'm pointing this out in my breakdown that although Alice Krige did return to voice the character, it was a stunt double on screen. I don't know if that really mattered. They were able to still change the Borg Queen a little bit, but she sounded familiar. I think with Annie Wershing last season, she did a good job as the character, but she felt very different, I think, than Susanna Thompson and Alice Krige. I think Susanna Thompson was trying to do her best when she played the Borg Queen on Voyager to do an Alice Krige impersonation. I don't think she was trying to reinvent the wheel with her take on the character. Annie Wershing with her mannerisms and stuff, I actually liked them. I thought that she played the character very well, but it didn't seem like the same character to me. And here it seemed different and familiar. I thought that this version of her was a lot scarier. You know, the way she looked, where it looked like somebody just put her body on top of something. It looked really messed up. And the fact that she was supposed to be suffering from that neurolytic pathogen, I really liked it. I thought that was really cool. And then in the second act, we got more stuff with Seven on the bridge and her working with that guy who was the cook and that kind of stuff. I thought it was really good. Again, I just think that Jerry Ryan really proved that she can lead a series. I mean, they're going to need some more characters on it. It's not going to be like a one-person show, which is Jerry Ryan. They'll need an ensemble cast. And unfortunately, if they lose Todd Stashwick, they can't have Captain Shaw, which would have been awesome. Maybe they can bring him back as an AI or something, like have him be the voice of the computer. That would be kind of cool, because you'd have his personality still as the computer, kind of like a evolution of the Doctor hologram from Voyager, making a character the voice of the computer. on the ship. I think Discovery has tried to do that. I know the computer on Discovery is kind of sentient now, but they could do something like that with Shaw as well. I really like that character. I really like Todd Stashwick. I don't like that they took him off the show. I do think that Seven can lead a show, and hopefully they do something with Star Trek Legacy. Another thing I liked about the Borg Queen and her interactions with Picard, in the second act, she kind of goes into how the neurolithic pathogen affected the Borg in a similar way to how the morphogenic virus affected the changelings. I never really put those two together as being so similar. I kind of feel kind of dumb for never thinking of that. And maybe the writers on Star Trek should have thought of that too, because it is very similar. Like Voyager and Janeway really took out the Borg in a very similar way that Section 31 and Starfleet took out the changelings in the Dominion War. So maybe now Starfleet doesn't look so bad. I don't hear anybody talking about Janeway the way they talk about Section 31, even considering Tuvix. So I kind of like that. I never really put that together, that the neurolithic pathogen and the morphogenic virus were so similar. And to bring these two enemies together because of that, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing, that was really smart. I thought that was a really smart way to kind of substantiate why you brought the changelings into the story, because it does kind of make sense that they would work together, because Starfleet kind of did the same thing to the Borg that they did to the changelings. Then next we get the Titan's assault on the fleet. If you don't remember, this was Seven kind of coming up with a plan to use the cloaking device and to target different ships and to kind of keep picking at them until they started attacking the Titan instead of attacking Earth and attacking the Earth space dock. I thought that was okay. I kind of felt like it was filler. And again, this is one of those scenes that you don't really want to think about that much, because if you do, you realize that by like firing on Starfleet ships and destroying those vessels, they probably killed like hundreds, if not thousands, of just defenseless officers who are being assimilated by the Borg. So kind of not a great plan, at the end of the day, to kill all those people that are on your side. They had to do something. Seven had to do something on the Titan instead of just sit there with the cloaking device on. So I guess it was that. But yeah, again, one of those scenes that you don't want to think about too much. And then after that, we get the Enterprise D going inside the Borg cube, which I thought was really cool. It made the Enterprise D seem small when everything else like makes the Enterprise D seem so big. They call it the fat one. Later, when we see the ship at the Fleet Museum, I think the Enterprise D is the only one that doesn't fit in the circles that like contain all the ships. With it flying through the Borg cube like it did, it really made it seem kind of small. Of course, it was a huge call back to Return of the Jedi, and I think they were very on the nose about that, which I'm fine with. I also really liked when it like kind of hovered over the characters that were in the cube and they could just see the Enterprise D over it. I never thought we would see a scene like that, so that was very cool. I don't know if the dimensions really work out, like if you think about it, but again, not one of those scenes that you don't really want to think about. We got to see Dr. Crusher blow some stuff up. That was really cool. This season did show a deadlier side of her. We saw that in the first episode of the season when she was just taking out those changelings on her own with a phaser rifle. Then, of course, we got Data being Lando Calrissian, flying through the ship and getting that big smile on his face. That was really cool. So I thought that was a really fun scene. And again, I think they were on the nose with the Return of the Jedi comparison, so I'm fine with it. And I thought it was really fun. And then, of course, that sets up the needs of the many moment when the crew realize firing on the beacon has the possibility of killing the people that are on the ground in the Borg cube. That was really good. I mean, it's a Star Trek finale. You need a needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few moment. And we got it right there. And I think they pulled it off really well. Really, this episode kind of had me on the edge of my seat thinking that they are going to take somebody out. They already took out Shaw. Who else, who's next that's going to be taken out? And everybody survived. I'm really happy that everyone survived, but they still had me on the edge of my seat. And moments like this kind of, again, up the ante, up the stakes, and made you feel like this was a big moment and we might really lose somebody, because the characters really were acting like they thought they were going to lose somebody. So it really translated, I think, to the audience. And then seeing Picard kind of enter the Borg, whatever you call that consciousness, that shared consciousness that the Borg have. I wonder if it's like that for everyone who is assimilated, like the way that Jack was euphoric and he thought he could hear everyone and everyone was happy. And I wonder if that is how everyone thinks it is when they are assimilated. I don't think they were clear about that. I'm not sure if Seven or Picard ever talked about what they actually saw when they were assimilated. I know that Seven on Voyager remembered being in something called Unimatrix Zero, but that was when she was deactivated, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if she remembers being conscious, if this is how that was. But I thought that was a really cool thing to see because we've never seen it before. And it gave Picard a chance to save Jack, showing how Picard has grown and Jack seeing that Picard really wants to be his father and is willing to sacrifice everything. I thought that was really cool. I felt authentic to me, and it really, tugged at the heartstrings. I thought that was a really cool scene, and how they were able to kind of take out the Borg Queen together. Picard wouldn't have been able to do it without Jack's help. That was a really smart way to handle that, and I thought that was really cool. Then we got the third act, which is basically just the aftermath of everything that happened. We saw that Dr. Crusher was promoted to Admiral, and that exposition that Riker gives us tells us that the changeling problem is also solved. I thought it was a good way to wrap everything up. I'm not a huge fan of exposition usually, but I thought that this was, pretty good. We got to see Crusher back in Starfleet. Now she's promoted. It was also really cool to see that Tuvok was okay. If you listen to my podcast, you know that I already reported that Tim Russ kind of leaked that he was going to be in 2 episodes this season. So we kind of already knew that Tuvok was going to appear in this episode, but it was still nice to see him come back. It was really cool that he had that kind of puck that had the officer review from Shaw. I thought that was a really nice callback to Tasha Yar, her hologram that she had created that they showed after, she passed away, and that Shaw gave that officer review of Seven, promoting her to captain, and then Tuvok was able to promote her to captain. That was all really good. It was nice to see Tuvok be the one, a piece of Voyager was able to promote Seven to this next rung in her life. And that was really nice to have a member of Voyager come back and promote Seven like that. I'm sure they probably would have wanted to get Janeway, but for whatever reason, they couldn't get back Kate Mulgrew for this episode. And I think Tim Russ did a great job. And then we had a nice scene between Worf and Raffi. I thought him and Raffi had a really good arc this season. I mentioned it before that I really liked them together. I thought that their plotline, when they were separate from the Titan, it was a changing tone, and then the places they were going were very interesting, very different from what was going on the Titan. So I really liked Worf and Raffi. If they do a Star Trek Legacy series, I hope that they kind of expand on Worf and Raffi and their relationship, and maybe Worf has another mission that he needs to go on, and Raffi can leave the Enterprise G now and join him on that adventure. I think that would be really cool. I like their chemistry together. It's kind of like a Mr. Miyagi, Daniel-san kind of thing, and I dig it. I think it's really cool, and I would like to see more of Raffi and Worf together. Speaking of the Enterprise G, we finally get the reveal that the Titan has been renamed the Enterprise G. Really cool way to end this series by giving a great send-off to the old crew, but obviously leaving the door open for another crew for the future. That was really smart. I think a lot of people were looking forward to seeing another Enterprise this season, even though we got to see the Enterprise F. But seeing the Titan rename the Enterprise G was just a great way to send off the old crew and, like I said, leave the door open for another. And I thought the final scene in 10 Forward really punctuated how this series and this season itself is just an extension of the finale from the Next Generation All Good Things. I mean, even the last shot in this episode is, I think, right on with the last shot from All Good Things, with the camera kind of rising from the poker table and spinning while Picard deals the cards. I read an article that I believe Terry Matalas said that everything said in that scene when they're playing cards is all off the cuff. There's no script there. It's just the actors playing as their characters. So knowing that, it's just a really fun scene, and I really like that. If that's the last time we see them together, that's a great way to end for those characters, and I really enjoyed it. And then they just couldn't end there, and we get a mid-credit scene, and I just have to say, I really wish they had not created this mid-credit scene with Q, but I completely understand why they did. if they want to make Star Trek Legacy, they want to continue on with these characters, they've got to whet the audience's appetite. And I think that's all this scene was meant to do, saying that, look, we can bring Star Trek Legacy back and this crew can mess with Q, and Q can literally do anything. He has the power to do anything. I know that there was some confusion as to how Q could even appear since he died at the end of last season of Picard. The reason he gives is that, people shouldn't be thinking linear, which means that he's technically a younger version of the Q that we saw last season. But really, it's just because these writers don't care about killing people and bringing them back. I mean, how many characters did we see killed or things get destroyed and come back? They don't care about it. They figure it's sci-fi, so we can do whatever we want, basically, with these characters. I mean, Star Trek really set the precedent for this when they brought Spock back. Having Q come back like this, there's so many times this season where it just seems like they don't care about season 1 and season 2, and I'm actually going to talk about that in my next segment. But honestly, I just wish they would have just ended with that last shot of them playing cards. I thought that would have been a perfect way to end this series, but they have to, do that end credit scene or mid credit scene, and we get Q back. So all in all, I thought it was great. I thought it was a great finale. My favorite finale of anything that Star Trek has done. But let me know what you thought of the finale in the comments below. If you had any problems with it, like I said, really, my only problem with the finale was the mid-credit scene. I wish they hadn't done that. I think just ending with them playing cards would have been perfect. So I would give it like a 9.9 out of 10, I guess, if I'm grading the finale on a scale like that. But let me know what you thought of the finale in the comments below. So now, quickly, I just kind of want to look at the series Picard and what I thought of it. Was it successful? And did it do what it set out to do? So first, let's talk about season 1 and season 2 just together. I think both of those seasons had their moments, but in the end, they felt insignificant, especially compared to the third season. I've already mentioned this, doing things and undoing them. Season 1 started with Data coming back, and it just felt like the series itself couldn't decide if it wanted to be a nostalgia-based series or if it wanted to feature new characters and kind of have Picard navigate through this world. We had Riker and Troy come back. We had, I just mentioned, Data come back. That's a lot of characters to start with. And we also had the new characters. We had Rafi, we had Soji, we had Cristobal Rios, and then we had Seven come back as well. It kind of walked the line of, are we going to talk about what happened before in Star Trek, or are we going to create a new story? And I don't think that it was successful. In the second season, again, I think that there were filler episodes. I think that some of the plot line didn't make a lot of sense. Probably having Q and the Borg Queen was a little bit too much. And then the end with the new Borg and Jurati, I think was just too out there. I think it just was a bridge too far, and it confused fans more than really putting a button end on the season, which is the last thing you want to do with a finale. You want to answer questions. You don't want to create more questions. And I think that season 2 definitely created more questions than answered any. And I think that Strange New Worlds has learned from season 1 and season 2 of Picard by just leaning into the nostalgia. We definitely have new characters on Strange New Worlds, but they live in a world that is very familiar, and they're intersecting with characters that we are familiar with. These actors are doing something new with those characters, and I like what they're doing on Strange New Worlds. But my point is that they're not just, having these new characters and they're just featured them. We even had Hemmer, who was a very popular new character on Strange New Worlds, get taken out in the first season. So I think that Strange New Worlds has kind of learned from season 1 and season 2 of Picard and is just leaning into that nostalgia. And I think season 3 did the same thing. I mean, there's no way you could watch season 3 of Picard without having first watched The Next Generation. I think you kind of could have watched season 1 and season 2 without first watching The Next Generation, but there's no way that you would have been able to enjoy season 3 of Picard without being a fan of TNG. And I think that's okay. I think that if you're going to own into that, then own into that and just go all for it. And I think that really that's what they did with this third season, is they said, we're not going to worry about the new characters anymore. In fact, Rafi is the only new character that appears in this season. They just decided that we're going to lean into nostalgia. We're going to bring everybody back from TNG, and that's what we're going to be about. And I think that it was successful because of that. And also in those terms, I think it felt like an event. Even though it was a 10 episode season, it still felt bigger than a season of television. It felt important. It felt like the stakes were raised. And a lot of ways, I think it really should have been a movie. I think this season would have been fine if they just cut out the Changeling plotline. If they cut out the Changeling plotline and just had some other race of beings infiltrate Starfleet for the Borg, or just do some other kind of MacGuffin to push that plotline along, because that's really the only thing they needed Changelings for, was to take over officers and implement that code into the transporters. So anybody could have done that. It didn't have to be the Changelings. As I mentioned earlier in my review, I do like how they tied it back to the neurolithic pathogen and the morphogenic virus and kind of tying the Changelings and the Borg together, but they didn't need to. I think that this could have been a 6 episode or a 3-hour movie, and you could have just cut out the Changelings. I think that the only reason that the audience is okay with the Changeling plotline was Amanda Plummer's performance as Vadic. I think she just killed it as that villain. I really didn't like how she went out because I thought she did such a great job. But if she is not Vadic, if they have a lesser actress or actor in that role, that is just a waste of time. That whole plotline with the Shrike is just a waste of time and is just filler until we get to the Borg. Because think about it, the whole plotline with them was Vadic getting Jack so she could bring Jack to the Borg Queen. Well, guess what? Vadic died, and then the first thing that happens after Vadic dies is that Jack takes his own butt to the Borg Queen. So we did not need Vadic at all. So I think if you just cut out the Changelings, and really, if I'm being honest, cut out season 1 and season 2. If Star Trek Picard would have just been Picard sitting in his vineyard and then getting that call from Crusher and cutting out everything else that happened before in season 1 and season 2, and then you get to season 3, and in season 3, cut out the Changeling plotline, I think you have a great movie. I think you really could have had a great Star Trek Picard 6 episode, 3-hour, whatever you want to call it, event film or miniseries, just like that. I think that would have been the perfect way to do this. Hindsight is always 20/20. I get it. But as a reviewer, I get to have hindsight. And in my opinion, that's what they should have done. And I think that they know that. And I think that that's why we're going to see more event style films in the future. But in my opinion, I think that it was really good. I think this was a good season. But if you're talking about the most efficient way to handle this plotline, just have the first half of the first episode of season 1, and then have the first episode of season 3 start, cut out the Changeling plotline, and end right where they ended. That is a perfect movie, Star Trek Picard, right there. But, we didn't get that, and for what we got, I still thought it was really good. Looking at the finale itself, I already mentioned this, I think it was the best finale in all of Star Trek, and this is the second time that The Next Generation has done this. The finale of TNG, All Good Things, was the best finale in Star Trek, and now the best finale is Star Trek Picard. So Picard and the crew of TNG are 2 for 2 when it comes to finales of Star Trek, in my opinion. And then if I'm going to cast my vote for an MVP this season, my MVP is Jonathan Frakes as Riker. I thought that he had a really good arc this season. I still buy that chemistry between him and Marina Sirtis. I mean, after all these years, they really seem like an old married couple that has had issues but is still in love. And this finale with him and Picard and everything that he went through this season, I thought was great. It was a great arc for him. And let's not forget that he also directed 2 episodes this season. So in my opinion, he is without a doubt the MVP this season. And my second place MVP, I think, is probably Worf. I think Michael Dorn really ate up the screen when he was there. I think that, he didn't get as many scenes as everybody else did. I think him and Geordi and Troy kind of got the short end of the stick when it came to some of their scenes together. But I think that in the scenes that he had, Michael Dorn as Worf, much like Jerry Ryan as Seven, proved that his character is compelling enough that audiences will tune in and watch him do more stuff. So I would love to see Worf do more stuff. if Jonathan Frakes is just behind the camera from now on, I'm okay with that because I love where Riker and Troy are at right now, like on a vacation in Orlando somewhere. I love that they're there and they're happy. They've had a lot of stuff happen to them, so I think that they're okay. I don't need to see Riker anymore just because I want his character to be happy. It's not selfish for me, it's selfish for him. I just want him to be happy. I don't want anything else to happen to them. So I want this to be the end for Riker, the end for Troy. I don't need to see them again. I would like to see Worf again, though. But yeah, that's what I think of the series Picard as a whole. Let me know what you think in the comments below if you agree with me. I think that all in all, it was probably not as successful as they would have liked. But I think that if you just look at the last season, I think that is a success. I think the last season of Picard is definitely a success, and I'm glad that it exists. You know, the first 2 seasons of Picard, I could have taken in them or leaving them, and this season I really enjoy. So let me know what you thought of Star Trek Picard as a series in the comments below. So now let's talk about new Star Trek, and last week we got 2 big drops from Paramount. I'm really confused as to why Paramount did this. It had to be something with contracts or special effects or something with Michelle Yeoh. They could have announced all this information on First Contact Day and didn't. And they kind of just pieced it out over, week and week and week. And I would have really liked all this at one day because think about it. On one day, we could have got a renewal announcement for all those series. We could have got a trailer for Strange New Worlds, and we could have got the announcements of Starfleet Academy and Section 31. But instead, I think they broke it out over 3 weeks for some reason. But anyway, now we have a trailer for season 2 of Strange New Worlds. That's going to be coming out in 7 weeks. So we have a little under 2 months until we get to watch a new episode of Strange New Worlds. I thought that it was very telling that they used a song by the Postal Service. I believe it's called Such Great Heights. Not a huge fan of the Postal Service, but everybody's heard that song. I think wasn't it in a UPS commercial or something like that. But the fact that Star Trek is using a popular song is actually very telling about the tone of the series. Usually Star Trek uses like orchestral music. It doesn't use popular music because this is the future. So using like popular music from this time doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you recall in the J.J. Abrams universe, they did use popular music and specifically the Beastie Boys. And they used it to set the tone of that film series as kind of fun and, kind of breaking the rules, stuff like that. And I think that Star Trek is trying to do it again with this song being in the Strange New Worlds trailer, because if you're a fan of the song, it's about, leaving your world behind. I think they even specifically put that lyric in text during the trailer. And, that's the Strange New Worlds kind of thing. Every week they're going to a new place, and that's going to be much different than what we've seen on Discovery and on Picard. And there's a lot of things about this trailer that are different than Discovery and Picard. And I think that was very on the nose and done very purposefully. But first of all, just hearing this song right at the beginning, it tells anyone who's watching this trailer that this show is less niche. It's not as sci-fi as other Star Trek. It can be more mainstream. And that's where they want to go with Strange New Worlds. I think that the first season of Strange New Worlds was really good, but I don't think it's as popular as the people at Paramount think that it really deserves to be. And for some reason, it just hasn't hit the mainstream yet. So hopefully with this second season, it will, because I do think it deserves it. I think it's a great series. So, having a song by the Postal Service, a song that people recognize in this trailer, is really a way for Paramount to kind of push Strange New Worlds into the mainstream. Another thing that you probably notice in this trailer that differentiates it from Discovery and Picard is that everything is so bright. The first thing you see in the trailer is the sun. It's right in your face. So that's telling you again, this is different than Picard. It's different than Discovery. This show is a lot lighter, like figuratively and literally. You're going to be able to see everything. I know that one of the criticisms of Picard earlier this season, and I know that it's been a criticism of Discovery as well, is that everything is just so dark. The bridges are dark. You can't see what's going on all the time. I think in this season of Picard, there was one episode that actually was released and had an issue with the lighting on it, so they had to re-release it later. So the people who watched it right away saw a really, really dark version of the episode. But showing the sun first in this trailer is just, again, showing the audience that this Strange New World series is different than other Star Trek series, and it's not just more mainstream, but it is brighter than every other series, and you could definitely notice that throughout the trailer. Another thing that I noticed in this trailer was there were a lot of scenes with Una, number one, played by Rebecca Romaine. She does the opening voiceover, and she has a couple other scenes with a couple other characters. If you remember the last season of Strange New Worlds, she was off the Enterprise. She was in the custody of Starfleet, so she must get back on the Enterprise pretty quick, which is good. There were some rumors that she might have like a separate plot line during the second season of Strange New Worlds and come back during the middle of the season or something. So she's one of these characters that has a clock on her back. One of these days, she's not going to be on the Enterprise anymore, but it looks like that day is going to be later rather than sooner, and that she's going to be on the Enterprise quite quickly. There's also a pretty cool shot of Ortegas. Ortegas is another character with a clock on her back because we know that she is not a part of James Kirk's bridge on the Enterprise when the original series starts. I know that a lot of people have theorized that she might be the next person to get taken out after Hemmer, and that Sulu might be the next, character they bring on as a younger character. I hope that it doesn't happen very quickly because I do like that character Ortegas a lot. I like that she's like small and tough. I really like characters like that. And I hope that, her days are not numbered quite yet. I also thought during the trailer that they're alluding to a romance between Dr. Mbenga and Nurse Chapel. In season 1, it was obvious that Nurse Chapel had feelings for Spock, but now it looks like she might have feelings for Dr. Mbenga. Both those characters work together and they are on the original series, so having them be in a romance might be interesting. There might be some things that we didn't know going on the original series between those two characters, and they're going to fill in the blanks on Strange New Worlds. I'm really looking forward to that. We also got the return of Paul Wesley as James Kirk, and they are alluding to a romance between La'an Noonien Singh and Kirk. That is kind of crazy because, of course, La'an's ancestor is Khan Noonien Singh, who Kirk will meet in quite a few years during the episode Space Seed. So having them being in a relationship is a really crazy way to take these two characters. We saw some leaked set photos from the filming of season 2 that showed these two characters together outside, and then somebody else said they saw them dining together. I can't remember where exactly it was, but it does look like these two have a time travel adventure on Earth together. You can see in the scene in the trailer, there's like a handicap sign on one of the windows, and it's in English. So I'm pretty sure that this is Earth. I wonder if they're going back to the 90s to when Khan Noonien Singh was alive on Earth. That would be crazy. That would be awesome to see, and I'm definitely here for that. One of the biggest things we saw in the trailer were Klingons, and to me, they look kind of like the Next Generation era Klingons. If you follow the original series and also Star Trek Enterprise, and to a certain extent DS9, you know that the Klingons went through a change with their look. In canon, they made a reason for why they didn't have ridges on their heads during the original series. Of course, it was because in real life, they didn't have the makeup to do it back then or the budget, but they did do an in-universe reason to why Klingons lost their forehead ridges and some of their like other features. It was because of another virus. Starfleet loves to use these viruses, I tell you. So the Klingons that we see in the trailer look very Next Generation era-esque. So I wonder if this is right before they change into the more human-looking Klingons, or if they're just not going to worry about that anymore and they're just going to not reference that at all. We could see either, or I think, this new era of Star Trek does play fast and loose with the legacy of Star Trek from time to time, and they might just not care about the Klingons losing their forehead ridges and say they just, were not as dark, because these do look like lighter Klingons, like their skin tone looks very light. So maybe that's how they changed. I don't know. Or maybe they're in the process of changing into a more human-looking Klingon. I also noticed if you blink, you miss it. There's a shot of a D7 cruiser, which was the Klingon cruiser from the original series. So that'll be really cool to see. I like the way they've made the old ships look new and these new ships look old, if that makes sense. Another thing I noticed was there was lots of different locations and everything looked different, like not just the time travel scene, but they were on the bridge and then they were in like a dreamscape. They were going, it almost looked like they were on a holodeck at one point, but they're really pushing that Strange New Worlds. Every week we're going to a different scenery kind of motif for the series. And I think you definitely get that from the trailer. Also, it looks like we're going to get to see Uhura's backstory. There's a shot of her like being very emotional in front of a crashed shuttle. And I believe that she mentioned that her parents died in a shuttle crash. And for her to be there like that, that might be a dream sequence or a memory or, again, like a holodeck. They never showed the holodeck until the Next Generation. That doesn't mean holodeck technology didn't exist anywhere. So they could be on a alien planet or somewhere that has holodeck technology. But it is cool that we're going to see more about Uhura. She is a character from the original series. So it would be nice to get a lot more of her backstory in Strange New Worlds. We didn't get much in the original series or in the films. So having more Uhura makes a lot of sense. It makes her character have a lot of meaning. And it's not just a member berry to have Uhura on the bridge of the Enterprise. There's actually a reason for her being in the show. We're seeing more of her backstory, and I'm definitely here for that. There was another blink and you'll miss it moment with La'an face to face with a Gorn. Again, that could be a dream sequence, or it could be like a captured Gorn, or she could be captured, because they're really like face to face. So I don't know what's going on there. It could be her facing her fears. It looks like the Gorn will be the villain for this crew, even though the Gorn, their first contact with Starfleet and the Federation is supposed to be in the episode Arena with James Kirk. So it'll be interesting to see how they tiptoe around that on Strange New Worlds if they keep using the Gorn. It was also very funny to see Spock in the big chair on the Enterprise. I don't know if that's his first time in the big chair. You know, what he said was definitely funny. And if nothing else, it shows that this series can be silly. We also saw that in the time travel scene with Kirk not being able to work a revolving door. It's okay to be silly sometimes in sci-fi. And that's one of my favorite parts of Strange New Worlds. And it looks like they are not losing that in season 2. And we are still going to see some silly scenes with this crew and these characters. One of my favorite scenes from the first season of Strange New Worlds is when Pike is on the bridge and he pretends to be a pirate, and he, number one is trying not to laugh. That scene is so stupid, but it's so awesome. The fact that scene exists on this series says so much to me, and I really enjoy it, and I love seeing those silly scenes. And we get a little member berry at the end too, with Kirk mentioning that he's from space. And of course, that's a play on another time travel adventure for James Kirk in the Voyage Home, when he tells, I want to say Dr. Carol Marcus. I know that's not her name. I can't remember her name right now, but he tells the main character from that movie when they're on a date that he's from Iowa, but he only works in space. It was funny to see that. It reminded me of another scene from that same movie with Scotty when he picks up the mouse and he's like, "Hello, computer," that doesn't know how to use the technology. Really excited for the season 2 debut of Strange New Worlds. Let me know what you thought of this trailer. Do you agree with what I saw? Did I miss anything in the trailer that I should have brought up? Let me know in the comments below. So finally, let's talk about that thing that I've been talking about forever on this channel, a Section 31 movie from Star Trek. If this is your first time visiting my podcast, welcome. But if you have been listening to probably even one other podcast that I have done, I've probably mentioned that I love the Section 31 idea with Michelle Yeoh, and I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for it. I just didn't understand why they haven't moved forward with it, especially with Miss Yeoh winning, all these awards. And now we finally have this announcement. So let me go through the announcement and I will tell you what I think as I go through it. The official announcement reads, Paramount Plus announced today it has officially greenlit Star Trek Section 31, starring Academy Award winner Michelle Yeoh. In this special original movie event for the service, Yeoh will return to her role as Emperor Philippa Georgiou, a character she first played in Star Trek Discovery's first season. So the big thing to take away from there is event for the service. This means this movie will not be releasing in the theaters. It will be released on Paramount Plus. I think that is a fantastic idea. Star Trek does not need to be releasing movies in theaters. Theaters are not as popular as they once were. They are not the barometer of how successful a franchise is anymore. So releasing this film maybe as a special engagement, I'm sure they'll do like special screenings in big cities and stuff like that, and then releasing it on Paramount Plus the next day. Fantastic. Great idea. This is what I've been asking for. This is the perfect way to do it. It almost feels like someone from Paramount has been watching my podcast. I'm sure they're not, but if someone from Paramount is watching my podcast, I am very employable. So if you like my ideas, just give me a call. I think that this is a great idea. And like I said, I've been waiting for it. I've been standing for it, as the kids say. They probably don't even say that anymore. But this does sound like a great idea to release this movie on Paramount Plus and not necessarily give it a wide release in the theaters. And then next, it states, in Star Trek Section 31, Emperor Philippa Georgiou joins a secret division of Starfleet tasked with protecting the United Federation of Planets and faces the sins of her past. Produced by CBS Studios, production will begin later this year. What I thought was interesting about that is that Starfleet Academy, the new series that was announced a week ago or 2 weeks ago, is not supposed to begin production until 2024. So this will actually go into production before that series, even though the series was announced before this movie. Again, I don't know why they didn't release all this information on First Contact Day, but it does seem kind of weird that this is going to start production before Starfleet Academy when they announced Starfleet Academy before this one. We don't have a release date yet for Section 31, but I would guess it would be about a year or, 16 months after it starts filming. And then we have a quote here from the Emperor herself, Michelle Yeoh. She states, "I'm beyond thrilled to return to my Star Trek family and to the role I've loved for so long." It really does seem like she loves this character, and not just the evil version. She has stated before, she loves the main universe version of her character as well, even though she was killed off. And all the way back in 2017, when she was cast and the first season was filming, she came to the producers of Star Trek Discovery with this spin-off idea for her character, and they've been working with that since that idea. So really, this series was from the mind of the actor playing the main character in it. And I just think that is amazing. When you can find an actress or actor that cares about their character so much that they literally create a spin-off for the character, that is just amazing. And it really speaks to her not just being a great actress, but being a great advocate for her work. And then we have a quote here from Alex Kurtzman, who of course is producing this film. He says this about Michelle Yeoh: "She broke new ground as one of the first two women on screen in the pilot to usher in a new age of Star Trek. And now, 6 years later, Star Trek Section 31 finally arrives on the heels of her latest groundbreaking win." So it kind of sounds like they're retconning her as the lead of Discovery a little bit, the way Kurtzman kind of said she was one of two first women. Because if you remember the promotion for the first season of Discovery, it was all Sonequa Martin Green and just a little bit of Michelle Yeoh. And now it seems like they're saying, oh no, she was one of the leads on Star Trek Discovery the whole time. So, okay, if they want to retcon her as the lead of Discovery, whatever. And then it states that this movie will be written by Craig Sweeney and directed by Olatunde Osunsanme, who has directed 11 episodes of Discovery. So he has worked with Discovery a lot, and Craig Sweeney has been a consulting producer on Discovery since the beginning. So these are two creators that know Discovery, they know working with this actress, they know the Section 31 plotline. It's not known if anybody else from the Section 31 plotline on Discovery will return. We might get one or two, but probably not. The way they ended with Philippa Georgiou being just whisked away by the Guardian of Forever, they could literally do anything with that character, which is another great way to start this series. But I don't think that we are going to see a lot of what happened directly after the Guardian of Forever, because I don't think the producers of this movie are going to want you to watch Discovery before you watch Section 31. I mean, in a perfect world, you watch everything for Star Trek, but they're not going to want only Star Trek Discovery fans to be watching Section 31 because Star Trek Discovery doesn't have a ton of fans. So I think when Section 31 starts, it's not going to be Michelle Yeoh crossing the threshold of the Guardian of Forever. We're going to get some exposition from her as to what happened and how she got out of whatever they put her in, because the writers aren't going to want you to have to go back to Star Trek Discovery to know where we are with the character in Section 31. So now, having said all of this, I just am really excited for this. I think that this is the perfect way to create a new event for Star Trek. I was not a huge fan of the Starfleet Academy idea because I think that that is designed to get younger viewers. But Section 31 is definitely designed not only for hardcore Star Trek fans, but also to bring in new fans because Section 31 is going to be so much different than anything Star Trek that we have seen before. And the fact that it's a movie, I think, works because in this day and age, everybody wants to binge. Nobody huddles around the TV on Sunday nights waiting for the ABC movie to come out. That day is long gone, and the pandemic really fast forwarded, I think, our culture's way of handling how we consume content. And now everybody wants to binge. So even look at a series like Cobra Kai. They have 10 episodes, but they release them all at once. And I think sometimes when you do that, nobody really has time to kind of nitpick at all the stuff that really doesn't make sense. And when I was talking about the last season of Star Trek Picard, I think that that's why some points it doesn't work as a 10 episode season, because when you have a week between each episode and it's 10 weeks to tell the whole story, you have a lot of time to think. You have a lot of time to pick. And if you're trying to create a fun event, some of this stuff isn't going to make sense, and you don't want your audience really sitting back and thinking that much. So when you release a movie like this and you release everything at once, you don't have time to think about it. You're just engrossed in what you're seeing. And then finally, I know that there are certain Star Trek fans that aren't big Section 31 fans because they are like the anti-Gene Roddenberry. You know, Gene Roddenberry wanted the utopia, and Section 31 is basically just politics. It's what we deal with in real world on a daily basis. And so it's kind of like like I said, it's anti-Gene Roddenberry. But the fact that it's so much different than anything else that we've seen, I think it deserves a place in Star Trek. And I think it's going to be popular for the franchise. I think it will bring in new fans. Looking back on the third season of Picard, when they did the Changeling plotline, I don't think a lot of people were too upset with what Section 31 did to the Changelings and how they changed them even more than we thought they did with the morphogenic virus. I think that I was one of the only voices that was like, that's not cool. Like, Section 31 looks a lot worse when you know, the way you depicted them in the series. But really, like, I think the audience as a whole didn't really care. So the fact that they were able to show that, like, Section 31 at their worst on Picard, and it really not just stop the show, I think speaks to how Section 31 could be popular as a film. So as I said before, I'm just really excited for this idea. I think it's going to be great. I think it's led by a fantastic actress. I love that she came up with this idea to begin with. And I think that we are definitely going to see more event-style films like this in the future rather than 10-episode series. I think that Starfleet Academy might be the last 10-episode series we get for quite a while. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this idea for a Section 31 movie, and are you excited for it? Well, that's all I have today. Thank you very much for joining me. Remember, the best way to support my work is to hit the subscribe and the like button. I still have about 80% of my viewers that are not subscribers, so if you could hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. And I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?